Today's guest now owns his own gym outside of Chicago in Elmhurst, Illinois. Over time, he's been involved with BJJ, also known as Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Our guest today also secured mixed martial art victories with a record of 7-0. I had the opportunity to know and train with our guest when I also trained Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in Chicago at the Uflacker Academy, when he was just a purple belt looking to climb the ranks and make a name for himself. So I'm very proud to have Professor Anthony Farrow on today's podcast to talk about his time in the Marine Corps, his combat experiences, and his career transition out of the military, which involved some PTSD. And he also learned how the mixed martial arts community could help him better discover more to life. Professor Farrow, it is an absolute honor to have you on the Morning Formation podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Dude, it's hard to believe that it's been over 10 years since I trained there in Chicago, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Time just flies so fast, and I want to give a shout out to Professor Christian Uflacker, because I know he kind of brought you along, right, and helped you.
I've been there ever since. I've been there since oh good Lord, 09. Jeez,
Yeah,
that's a long time. Yeah, that's a long time. I try to stay. He's a good guy. I stay loyal, and um, yeah, it's been
yeah.
a long 10 years since we trained together. Wow, that's long.
I know,
I just
right?
think he has a purple belt, and that was awful. Just scrappy. Didn't know
Yeah,
anything.
I tell you what, man, I was very impressed with that school, very impressed with the academy, the folks that trained there. I know there was a lot of law enforcement that trained there as well, a lot of military folks that trained there. So it still is a very impressive academy. And it's great to see that you had grown your own school as well out there in Elmhurst, Illinois. And I understand you're starting your second school. Is that right?
Yeah, well, it was still my first school, but I moved into my third location. I've been open 4 years,
Wow.
but this is third location already. It's just bigger. We've outgrown every gym, and that's a good problem to have, but it's also stress, and you got to move into new places,
Hey, man.
and
Yeah, it's growing, and you're actually changing a lot of lives. I think that's incredible, man. So let's get into it, man. Let's talk about, where are you from, Anthony, and why did you decide to join the Marine Corps over all other branches?
so I'm from Alsop, Palos Heights, south suburbs of Chicago. Um, uh, why I went in the Marines instead was because I wasn't headed in the best direction after I did like a year of college, gave up, and just, I didn't really have any hobbies. Jiu-jitsu wasn't around at the time. I loved martial arts. I was taking Hapkido, but that was not nearly the same type of, workout and stuff like that. Um, I chose the Marines because I wanted the toughest one. I wanted the hardest one. I wanted to change my whole life around. And I did. I
Yeah.
sure did. But I wanted the challenge. I needed a change. I needed a change.
So was the military familiar territory for you and your family, or was you kind of an outlier?
Yeah, nobody that I know of served. I think I had maybe a cousin served a long time ago or something. I don't remember, but no, nobody served. It was it was very foreign for all of us. It was very different, very different. Um,
Right. So you have a lot of courage, first of all, to just walk into the dark and join the military, having no one else to kind of relate to what you're about to go through. You leave and you go active duty Marines. Where's your first duty station?
Lejeune. That was my only duty station. I trained on the West Coast though, but they shipped me off to East Coast Lejeune the whole time there.
All right. And so, how many years did you do in the Marine Corps? And talk to us about your first deployment into combat.
I did four active, four inactive, so just eight total that we'd have to do. I went to Iraq in '05 and '06, so 2 years out of the 4 years I've been in. So I was deployed more than I was on base. Um, I was in the fleet for about 5 or 6 months before we shipped out. So we spent a lot of that time training. I was motor T, so we did. I learned as much about trucks as we could, and how to drive and stuff like that. But then we went to Iraq in February to September, and our station was in Fallujah. And the War of Fallujah was in I want to say oh 05, late '04 to '05. So we
Yeah.
got there right after the grunts, and everybody just tore that place up. It was very violent. I mean, you could tell when they were leaving. Just we had brand new camis on, and they just looked like. I mean, they lost. You could tell they lost a lot of people, and were tired and just done. But yeah, then we were stuck for Fallujah there for 7 months, and I somehow became the lead machine gunner of the convoys in front of my lieutenant, and it's a lot of crazy stuff. A lot of crazy stuff happened that 7 months, but I got out of there somehow. I got out of there
Yeah.
somehow. So it was a lot. It was 7 months straight of Groundhog Day. You wake up, you do the same exact thing. You don't see clouds in the sky. It's hot, just hot, and that's it. You're just hot for 24 hours for about
Wow.
6 months out of the 7 months. I was just hot.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I feel you, man. I was located up in Mosul, Iraq in 2004, 2005,
oh
and
wow.
my cousin was one of the Blackwater guys that was actually ambushed and was drugged through the streets. His name's Wesley Bartolona. So
Oh,
Fallujah is fairly near and dear to my heart, and some of the things that happened there as well. I was there right around the same time as you. So in convoy, I was a transportation officer. So convoy was something I was very, very familiar with. Now, when you deployed, how old were you, and what rank were you?
I was older. I mean, when I deployed, I was 23. When I went in the Marines, I was 22. So I was kind of older than a lot of the 18-year-olds right after high school. Yeah, I was 20. What did I say? 20, yeah, 23. 23 on my first deployment. So I was a Lance. I got out of boot camp as a PFC because I got the college credits for it because I did not want to be a private after. I wanted to, like, if I was going for this, I knew this was going to be my life, or not. It was going to direct me towards my life. You can't mess up in the military. Like, you gotta. I wanted as much rank as I could get.
Right,
I did that. I did my research before I went in. That's all I did. Um, but yeah, so I was a lance corporal.
right on. That's
Um,
fairly. That's still fairly young. 23 years old. Your first deployment. And how many deployments did you do total?
two, two back to back.
Wow.
We were back home for 3 months, and then we went right back
And the
again.
second time, still Fallujah.
See, this was TQ. I can't pronounce it, but we called it TQ. And then it was really rough. We got sent to Ramadi for a month for like a mission, a secret mission with the army. Um, that was bad. It was Ramadi was not good at that time. I mean, Ramadi was never good, but it was rough at that time. But we were there already. That's all we knew. We didn't know anything else.
Right,
We didn't have time to get used to being home in the civilian world again. We were just right back in the desert, in the sand, doing what
right,
we did 3 months prior for 7 months. Our attitudes were completely different too. I mean, the second time we were just, you know, we knew it all already. A lot of our lieutenants and stuff, that was their first time over there, and we're like, hey, we know what combat is. Like, easy there.
right,
So we were like, we were belligerent. It's war, or whatever. It was wartime.
right. And so, did you get an opportunity to talk to anyone that was actually in Iraq in that area before they went in and cleaned out Fallujah?
No.
So I did. Like when I was in Mosul, there was a couple of guys that were from the from 82nd. There were a couple of first lieutenants that were there the year prior to Fallujah getting taken over by us, and they said it was a completely different world back then. They would actually go out into town in soft skin Humvees and make local purchases. And um,
Oh,
when I was there, same time as you, like there was no way in hell you would go outside the wire uh, without, sandbags on the floor, ghetto metal on the side of your vehicles, or eventually we got the level 3 Tardak stuff,
yeah.
the Oshkosh stuff. But it's pretty wild. I felt like every year that went by, Iraq would change, and it wouldn't be the same as it was the year before. Did you experience the same the second time you went to Iraq?
Oh um, man, it's hard to even remember. It was just we were in different areas,
Yeah,
but still, like we were still getting more of the same, and if not more, the longer we stayed there. They were sick of us being there.
right.
Um, so to me, not really, because I think it was just such a quick transition.
Yeah, it was
It
3 months,
was
right?
it was the same. It was three,
Right.
4 months. So it was the same bullshit that it was before. It was, you know,
Yeah.
not the best, not the best times there.
So,
It was ugly a lot of times. But
so you come back from your second deployment and you get out of the Marines shortly thereafter that. What was that transition like? Did you already know what you were going to be doing, like when you uh,
yeah,
got out of the uniform?
yeah. My brother-in-law, luckily, he worked for Comcast Cable Company, and I moved back to Illinois 2 months later at a job interview, and I was hired on spot. So I had that stress. I was like, hell yeah, I got a job. But it was just an awful job, and I was in an awful state of mind without knowing. And I did that awfulness for close to 8 years, and that made my PTSD get really bad. And at the time, I didn't know I had PTSD, or I refused to believe it that I had PTSD.
Yeah.
Um, the transition was rough. It was rough. You didn't think. I went. I had a new job. I was going in customers' homes, getting disrespected. I'm like, what the hell's going on? Like, this isn't the world I'm used to. Um, like, I'm like, do you know where I just been? Like, it's like, I don't want to be like that. But at the time, I was like, these people are screaming at me because of a cable line. I'm like, I should have been dead 50 times. Like, are you really complaining about a cable line like this? But
Right.
that transition stuff for me was tough.
Yeah. And I can tell you that I don't know if you felt the same way, but when I transitioned out, I just wanted to be left alone. Like I wanted to get out. I wanted to check all the blocks and just not go through any of the out processing stuff at all. And I feel the way that you felt, where I came back from Iraq and I had people who were sitting back here watching TV, telling me what was going on and telling me what it was like. Right? You
Oh,
experienced the same?
that's the best. When they say, what's in Iraq, why you went to Iraq, what's in Iraq.
Right.
I'm like, oh, because you read it online. Okay. I mean, I wasn't there or anything, so what would I know?
Right.
A lot of ignorance, and I wasn't used to it.
Right.
And now it's just times 1,000. But when I got out, but I never realized that I had a lot of people hate me because I was in the military. I didn't know people actually thought
Yeah.
that stuff, or like hated people in the military because they think we're all killers and stuff. I'm like, wow, you just don't know. You don't know anything about anything.
Right. Right. And that's one of the main reasons I started this podcast, was because anytime I ever heard about military veterans or what veterans were doing, I always heard about the drug addict or the alcoholic, or it's not the guys that are out there like you that are building businesses, changing lives. It's always about the negative stuff,
Like,
man. And so, I got tired of hearing it. I got tired of hearing it because I know there's a lot of guys out here that are killing it and are making it and are overcoming all the obstacles between these two different cultures of the civilian world versus the military world, right? And so, I really appreciate guys like you that are just so courageous, strong, brave. You're out there changing anyone that you've trained over the years, Anthony. You've literally positively changed their life. And having trained jiu-jitsu for the last 11 years or so, man, it's that's how I have felt about it, and I have a lot of respect for what you do specifically. So, at what point, though, you took Aikido back in the
Yeah.
day? At what point did you find yourself back on the mats again, and what were you doing?
So I know exactly where I was at. I was getting into, I loved watching UFC, loved watching Pride. That's when Pride was getting huge. My favorite fighter was Chuck Liddell. I would remember watching him in Iraq knock out Bob Ballou, I think twice. I was so involved in it. I'm like, man, I would love to like try something like this. I always wanted to do jujitsu because of Hoist Gracie, though. This was before, this was like in the beginning of the military where I was studying jujitsu, like reading books on the Gracies, but I couldn't afford jujitsu. That's when it just started coming around right before I joined the military. Only school was in like the city, and it was like I couldn't do that. I was young, I didn't have the money. Um, so after my first deployment, again, we didn't have much time to transition, but after the second deployment, I knew my mental health was getting kind of weird. And, we would lift. It didn't matter if we got no sleep. We went to the gym right away to get that anger out. And I was lifting a ton of weight. And that's why I'm probably hurt because I lifted so much heavy weight for being so small. But, that's what we did. That's what all we had to do was fun and recreational. So, with about when we went to Ramadi, like I brought up earlier, when we got stationed out there, they had a gym with mats, and I we were with reservists at the time, and we had about 10 reservists in my platoon, which those guys are trips. But we had a blue belt, which was like the almighty blue belt. That's how stuff changed, right? Like
Right.
this guy was blue belt. He was a god. I'm like, oh my god, you're a blue belt? Like how? So we went to the gym. He started showing us a few arm bars and triangles. And he's like, all right, go grapple with this Marine. And I remember, I didn't know what the hell it was. And instantly I get a triangle on the guy. And after that, I freaked out. Like, I loved it. I choked somebody out with my legs after learning jujitsu for like 15 minutes because I
Wow.
think just reading all the books helped, having long legs. And the guy that I triangled actually lives in Illinois. And he's a Marine. He lives in Illinois. And he's one of my buddies. That's funny. But he was the first guy that got triangled by me. But yeah, that was in Ramadi, and after that, that was it. When we got back home, signed up at the closest jiu-jitsu, more of an MMA school, and that was the time when Brian Stan was coming up in the WEC.
Hmm.
Uh, he was captain. Um, like I read his book, Marine Captain. He's been through a lot of shit. Um,
Yeah.
you know,
He's a Silver Star recipient, isn't he?
he's been through a lot. It's crazy.
Yeah.
But I saw how he trained, and he would talk to me, as a person because he was a officer. So it's weird to see them outside of work. But he had no one to train with, so you would just see all these big Marines come in there and try to beat this guy up, and he would just knock their heads off. That's how he was training to get in the WEC, and then he got out, and then he went in the UFC after that. But that's where I started, and I was good at kicks. I started doing some stand up, and it just took a long. I've been through so much of getting my butt kicked in the beginning, like and tears because I would just get my ass beat sparring because I never did something like that before. I got collar choked. The guy was laughing at me as I was getting collar choked. I had a girl choke the shit out of me,
Oh
unconscious
yeah.
almost.
Oh yeah.
Right? And